Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase had amazing seasons for the Cincinnati Bengals, but unfortunately, it was not enough for them to carry into the 2024 playoffs. Now they enter the offseason looking at what could have been and also where they need to improve. My name is Tyler, here with my brother Ryan, and we're going to break down what you can expect the Cincinnati Bengals to do this 2025 offseason. But before we do that, if you like the content that Ryan and I put out and you want to help the Tracy State channel grow, the easiest way is hitting that subscribe button, tackling that bell to get notified when new videos come out. And while you're at it, leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Cincinnati Bengals do this offseason. And Ryan, let's pull up the slides here. Just what an amazing year by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's nearly 5,000-yard season from Joe Burrow passing wise. 43 touchdowns here. The stats you're going to see here are just the team averages as well, but they're the number one passing team. Jamar Chase had 1,700 receiving yards and 17 touchdowns on the season. It's absolutely wild. Trey Hendrickson, too. I'm pretty sure he also led the league in sacks. Yeah,
Yeah,
17 and a half sacks.
Yeah.
So this will go down as one of the most historic seasons where you had the leading QB, the leading receiver, leading sack producer, and the team did not make the playoffs. And it just goes to show like every single game of the season is important. It's like they really didn't have any blowout losses. I think they were blowout loss to Philly in like week 8 was like their only true loss I could think of where it was like, yeah, no, like they got blown out. They were just not the better team that day. But every other game though, it's immediately coming to my mind here. I'm looking at the schedule now. Came down to like one possession, and they found multiple ways to lose early on in the season. So, Ryan, I want to throw it over to you here as we look at the stats here, and it's like it's pretty obvious to me, and I think to everybody, like what the Bengals really need to improve on. But outside of just the defensive side of the ball, what are some areas you think the Bengals can improve on to make the playoffs next year?
That offensive line, I still think is a liability. They had the 30th ranked rushing offense, as you can see, and that offensive line just really struggled to get any push consistently in the run game. Orlando Brown Jr. and Marius Mims seem to be your tackles of the future, but you got to, I think, revamp the interior of that offensive line. They did get rid of Lou Anarumo on the defensive side of the ball. I know it wasn't the statistical year you want from this defense, but honestly, I feel like it had more to do with the players than necessarily the coaching. Lou Anarumo has been a long-time defensive coordinator. He was a last head coaching cycle, had multiple head coaching interviews. Like he's a very good defensive mind, and so I find it hard to believe that like this defense was struggling because of coaching. And so I think there needs to be a lot of turnover on that side of the ball, beef up that offensive line. And I'm really curious to see what they look like in 2025, because this team, while they didn't make the playoffs, was one of the hottest teams at the end of the season. I think like they're going to be a nightmare in 2025, because I think it finally really came back to bite them having the slow starts. So the game against New England is the one that sticks out. I don't know what they were doing in that game. As a Patriots fan, they just gave it away. They didn't show up. They weren't prepared. And if they win that game, they're in the playoffs, and they're probably playing this weekend.
Potentially so. Yeah, that's the biggest thing is like if they win that New England game, then I think not only are they winning that New England game, I think aren't you guys actually picking first overall? I think you guys are still picking first overall.
Yeah, we would be.
Yeah. So just the butterfly effect of them like just not looking prepared, not really doing anything, and to be honest, like they've done in the past, where then they still make the playoffs and they still make these deep playoff runs. And so, to your point about Lou Armorano,
Anarumo,
sorry, I get your point. But that being said, though, with the performance that the defensive team had this season, and you go look at some of their losses, like I think 6 losses where the offense put up 30+ points or something like that. It's kind of one of those, be like, hey, we need to make a decision. Like, even if what you're saying is valid, they need to make a decision. And like we just need to start over, just because like we can't be this bad ever again.
Some of that was Lou Anarumo had said, like, I can't run the scheme that I want to run with this defense. Like it's too complex for them and they can't handle it. Some of that is like, well, you got to do something that they can run like at a certain point. And that is on coaching. And I will concede that point as well. So
Yeah, yeah. I think one area I'd love to see too, as we also kind of start to transition to this offseason is that Chase Brown, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. He didn't play in the last game, so like he would have become a 1,000-yard rusher then. But
Yeah.
if they could, similar to the defense, just get an average running game, have Chase Brown, who's also on my dynasty team. So I would like that to him to continue to keep doing well. But he's such a just a great overall back. He's not going to be a leading rusher or anything, but I think when it comes to maybe total yards, he can maybe have the most total yards from scrimmage, I will say, because he's a great back out of the backfield. That's going to be something that's interesting on what they do end up addressing in the offseason. But here, kind of when it comes to some of their key free agents, and they are going into the offseason with about 47 million in cap space, maybe 48
Yeah.
million according to Over the Cap. I'm not sure what Spot Track is saying. But Von Bell, Mike Hilton, BJ Hill, T. Higgins. T. Higgins is going to be the big one here. Is do they bring him back? Do they re-sign him? A lot of people are talking that he's going to be worth upwards of $30 million just with the market. And
Yeah.
honestly, too, it's a very unique 2025 offseason for receivers because I would say this offseason isn't particularly stellar with he's a clear number one free agent. And at the same time, too, the draft is they're good receivers, but it's not like last year where you're going to have the Marvin Harrison Jr. or the Malik Neighbors. But like so Stephon Diggs is going to be a free agent, but he's going to be coming off an ACL injury. Keenan Allen is 32, I think. Mari Cooper is older. Chris Godwin is coming off a serious ankle injury, and he's probably going to stay in Buffalo. He's probably going to stay in Tampa Bay. So he's the clear golden ticket, I feel, for a lot of these teams. And that's why I think it's going to keep driving up that value if they want to keep him. And if they do
Yeah.
that, how are they going to address the secondary? How are they going to address the defensive line? Are they going to want to bring back BJ Hill? Where are they going to address positions elsewhere on the defensive side, trying to bring in good talent? Because that's the true area I think of need next year. T. Higgins is a super great player, and as we saw the performance that he had against Pittsburgh and his performances over the past couple of games of the season to keep them in were phenomenal. But I also wonder too, though, how much could $30 million get you on the defensive side of the ball as
Yeah.
well? It's just a food for thought. I totally would get it if they want to re-sign him. If they don't re-sign him, they do have Andre Yoshivas, who, as I said, I'm not saying he's as good as T. Higgins, but he seems like he could kind of fit into that receiver two role as well. So I don't think it'd be
Yeah.
like the biggest of losses.
Uh, the
Go
other
ahead.
thing too, like, so Trey Hendrickson, his contract is up after 2025.
Yeah.
So that he could be a potential extension candidate with some of this money. Like, there are other things you could go and do with this money, other than just go and give 3/4 of it to T Higgins. So
Well,
uh,
and so I think one of the biggest things too that we're saying is we're not saying that like
y-
they need to move on from T. Higgins or that these or Andre Ushvash is better than T.
yeah,
Higgins. I think the biggest thing is how do you want to allocate your money? How do you want to allocate your
yeah,
resources? And these are just some of the things that they're going to be talking about. The way T. Higgins played like towards the end of the season and what he would
yeah,
bring to this offense, I would totally get why you'd bring it back. But that would be a majority of your cap space that you have right now. So how do you want to move around money,
hmm
reallocate money to where then you could still go and address these needs in free agency? I think one thing too that'd be interesting as we move on to the next slide here. Some free agents they could go after. I think a guy bringing DJ Reed. I think that would be very interesting to help out that secondary. Chase Young to go across from Trey Hendrickson. I think would be very interesting as well. Sam Hubbard is a potential cap casualty. It wouldn't be too much savings, but at the same time, too, what they're paying him
yeah,
versus like the production that they're getting out of him, is just something that I think they would think about as well. Stephon Gilmore was another guy I thought that would be good, but there's a pretty interesting overall free agency secondary
yeah,
that they could bring in.
yeah,
I think a sneaky one too as well if he'd ever leave Buffalo, but if we want to get somebody cheaper, I think DeMar Hamlin to address the safety position, I think would be an interesting route if they wanted to end up going that way. But pretty good overall secondary free agency class, in my opinion.
No, yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. This secondary, you can really add some contributing corners. You can really add some guys that can be starters for you as soon as they enter the organization. So the other thing too, like, that kind of makes that T Higgins cap or the T Higgins signing cap space situation a little bit more interesting, is also they only have 6 picks. So you're not really going to be able to go out and replace him. So one thing that they could do is potentially tag and trade him again to a destination of his choosing. The only thing is you're not going to reap nearly the value that you would if you were to trade him, say, at the end of a contract. One, he was injured. He has been injured a little bit over the past couple years, but then also teams are going to have to give him that big contract and that big payday. So those teams are in it for the draft pick and then also the extension right away. They don't get the benefit of that rookie contract value. So they will probably maybe get I think a second or a third, maybe a second or maybe a third and another pick for T. Higgins if they do decide to go the tag and trade route.
Well,
So
and that's what I was going to ask you is you're the Patriots fan. What would you do, or what would you want them to do? Like if they tagged him, what do you think would be fair for the Patriots to trade him for?
I would give them a third and a future fourth.
Okay.
Because to me, New England has the cap space to sign him, but the big thing is New England also has a lot of other needs, and picking at 38 and 4, like those picks to me are really valuable. You could potentially like talk me into maybe doing a pick swap of like 38 for 49 plus like a later day 3 pick. Like there are other scenarios there where you could like negotiate, but I really think it would be you'd be hard pressed to get somebody to give up a first rounder for T. Higgins, especially when they have to go and then make him one of the highest paid receivers in the league at the moment.
Yeah, and then I think the teams too that would maybe make it a first round, it would have to be maybe potential later first round. I don't think the
Yeah.
Bengals are going to want to give that those teams that opportunity. So, but
Yeah.
I think some other quick draft targets here with the picks that they do have, if they decide to stay put at 17, I think Kenneth Grant would be a great guy. Plug him there in the middle, and then have Trey Hendrickson on the outside as well. Jahdae Barron, if they'd want to address the cornerback. Jahdae Barron, he might be more of a nickel guy, but I think as we've seen here now too, and with the way offenses are like panning out in the league, is you just want to have as many good secondary guys out there. Like go look at, I know Jahdae Barrett's not entirely like Brian Branch, but go look at a guy like Brian Branch in Detroit. He's definitely more of a safety, but he just moves around a bunch of the box and can be that nickel guy for them. And so I think Jahdae Barron, he's played outside in college. Maybe he can do it in the NFL, but worse, I think he can kick in to nickel, and I think be really good as well. So, last position too that we were talking about as well, Colson Loveland. I think tight end spot could be a sneaky first round. Maybe they could re-sign Mike Gisecki as well, but I think if they're wanting to really try and improve and just get more pass catchers and playmakers in there, especially if T. Higgins moves on, a guy like Colson Loveland, I think could kind of kill two birds with one stone. I think he would do well with Joe Burrow. So it's going to be interesting with what Cincinnati does here. They're in a very unique spot where I think they're much better than the 9-8 team that they are. And at the same time too, as well, they're in a unique spot in the draft where I think a lot of the top defensive linemen are going to be gone. They could get a secondary guy there or a tight end spot. So it's like, how are they going to look to improve their team? And I think once we figure out what happens with T. Higgins, then those dominoes are going to start to fall. On kind of their clear path on what they want to do.
Yeah, I do find it hard to believe that they will just let T. Higgins walk freely out the door. Especially at most back that they would get would be, well, they would get a third round comp pick for T. Higgins, but they wouldn't get that all the way until 2026, I believe. And so that would be, to me, that would be crazy to want to do that. So all in all, I mean, the Bengals, like you said, they're in an interesting spot. The biggest thing, like they have a lot of spots figured out. They have their edge rusher, they have their number one wide receiver, they have their quarterback, obviously. So their tackles seem to be playing okay. At this point, I think Amarius Mims still has a long way to grow, but the potential is definitely there. Fix up the interior of that offensive line, start stopping the run on the defensive side of the ball, and man, this team could be really scary in 2025. So let's go ahead. Yeah, exactly. Easy math. Let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you want to see the Cincinnati Bengals do in the 2025 offseason. Do you want them to re-sign T. Higgins? Do you want them to tag and trade him? Do you want them to just let him go freely? I highly doubt that's the answer, but let us know down below. And other than that, we will see you guys next time.